Hi, friends. It's been so long since I recorded a video that I kind of forgot how it goes, so we might have a rocky start. And also, I'm going to do a little fluffing, which I definitely should have done or could have done before I started, and it would have made it a more efficient video. But I just wrote a blog, and partly because I've been really into audiobooks lately, and partly because I think these are just some words that some people need to hear, I have decided to do an associated vlog, and so I am just going to read what I wrote. So, dame un momento. You ready? Okay. Había una vez a woman fell in love with a man, and all she knew to look out for were things like drug addiction and forthright physical abuse. And he didn't break any laws, and he didn't hit her, so even when all hell broke loose and he broke all of his promises, she thought, love sacrifices, love understands, and then love wins. So she kept going. Obvi, that woman was me, and that man was my ex, and the things he didn't do that I knew to look out for ended up having nothing to do with what actually harmed me. Recently, I've been defining things. We tell kids that they have to name it to tame it when dealing with hard feelings or situations in life, that a brain needs a name for a thing to know where to put it. And for many years, I wasn't able to name what was wrong in my relationship. But I can name it now, and I'm going to. I'm going to because I deserve the dignity of saying my experience, and because there are others going through these things who deserve to have their experience validated as well. As it turns out, I was in an emotionally abusive relationship. I was dehumanized and diminished, lied to and ignored, gaslighted and silenced, and eventually assaulted. I didn't know these things were happening. He largely didn't know he was doing them, but they happened, and as a friend said, you were harmed. It impacted your mental, spiritual, and physical health. It was abuse. And so here, for the sake of helping others name their hurts, so that those hurts may no longer have such power over them, so that those hurts can be tamed, here's how it went down. For our whole relationship, my ex would systematically demean and dismiss my experiences and perspectives. He would say things like, that's not how things work, or that didn't happen, or you're overreacting. He would take not my side. He would say, yes, I'll do this. And when he didn't do it, he would say, well, you should ask me more nicely. And when I did ask him more nicely, he would say, well, I really need you to remind me. And eventually he just said that the problem with him not doing what he said he would do was my poor mental health, which survey says, sure, I've got my own crazy, but I handle it hella well so long as I'm not being abused. He also said that it was about my past trauma, as opposed to taking responsibility for the things he was doing to traumatize me. And eventually he said that I needed medication, and that I don't forgive and nothing makes me happy. And those two statements are so idiotically antithetical to me that I could have laughed at them if I hadn't been so under his power. And he said that those were the problems in our relationship. My problems were the problems in our relationship. And if someone close to you tells you something enough, you start to believe it. Which also shows that I let him be close to me, but he didn't do the same because I told him. I told him it wasn't okay. I told him he was hurting me. I told him he needed more and different, that I needed more and different, and that we should get help. And, well, eventually when all I could do was keep myself safe, he told me that I left him. Look, people, friends, if you didn't grow up with trustworthy people, you may not know how to pick them out. And because of that, you may be, what sickens me to say, but I don't have any truer words, you may be abuse bait. If you've been abused for most of your life, you'll only know how to be in abusive relationships. If you've been taken for granted and sacrificed for the good of the other and demeaned and devalued, you'll probably slip right into a relationship that has those same aspects without even realizing it. Even if you've had a lot of therapy. Perhaps especially if you're part of a religious structure that suggests self-sacrifice without appropriately highlighting self-love and self-care. i.e., it's a beautiful choice to die for a person who needs you to die in order for them to have the life they deserve. But it is folly and wasteful to give yourself for one who is willing to kill you just because it's easier than them changing. And that is so shitty. But anytime you decide to get off that train, it is not too late. And it is not shameful and it's not stupid. So get off the train. If you're on a bad train, get off the train. Words are so important. When people used to ask me what was wrong in my marriage, I'd say things like, he wasn't very nice to me, which meant he'd ignore me for weeks on end, and he'd break his promises and blame me. He'd refuse to be sorry, and when I was absolutely pushed to the edge and losing myself and sobbing in bed while self-harming, he'd just turn over and go to sleep. I would say he didn't like me, but what that really meant was he'd look at me with hate in his eyes, and he'd huff and puff and roll his eyes with such startling condescension and contempt that I could feel it physically, as though someone had just squeezed all of the breath and ability out of me. I'd say things were bad, but I hadn't yet learned to say he sexually assaulted me 3 times, because people think that a penis has to go into a vagina for assault to happen and that married people should get a pass because he didn't really know you were asleep the first time. And he wasn't nice to me is very different from he gaslighted and emotionally abused me. Furthermore, he didn't like me is different from he treated me hatefully and contemptuously except for about 6 hours a month. Sure as hell, things were bad does not give due dignity to a woman looking into a man's eyes and holding his hands and telling him, please don't do this to my body, and him immediately taking those hands and doing the thing. I don't need to air my grievances. Those who are in a position to give me care already know and already do give me that care. I don't need him to see what he's done. By God's grace and lots of work and the love of others, I have my needs met. But I do need to call things by their actual names. I need to name them, to tame them, so they no longer have power over me. And while I fear so many things, the censure of others, that I will not be believed, that my bad behavior, which I've always named, which I've always said I was sorry for and corrected, even with him, that my bad behavior will be seen as an excuse rather than the last resort of a desperate woman who did not know she had any other way out. And I fear, and I know this one is irrational, that I'm not giving him enough grace. And every time I think that out loud, a friend jumps up from a corner and says, Ritz, I was there. You're not telling the whole story. Forget how bad it was. You're being too nice. I fear all of those things, but none of those fears are bigger than my strength or my will or my certainty that my voice is for speaking and my songs are for singing and my truths are for knowing, and so are yours. So my point and my benediction are this. May God, God's self, come upon you with grace and truth, that you may also name all of the nameless things. Your wrongs and the wrongs you have suffered, your dreams and the dreams you must mourn, and may you always have the shelter of angels, some of whom will hold you close and kiss your tears and remind you, I'm here.